What's going on, guys? Sam Adams here, and welcome to another episode of Caffeinate today for December the 21st of 2018. Now, for you video watchers, let me just prepare you because I have what I would consider to be the best sports code ever on today. Of course, it is the day before the break of Caffeinate for Christmas, but before we jump into more about that, for those that are brand new to the show, this is a daily gaming news podcast where I bring you the hottest gaming news from around the industry and let you guys know what is going on. Now, you might be saying, Sam, you still sound slightly sick. Well, that's because when I use inflection, my voice sounds strange. So we'll see if I can even go to work tomorrow because I do host a trivia night where I have to read things in a fun way. This doesn't sound very fun. This sounds like somebody who's dying of some kind of lung issue. However, again, this is a show that is hosted right here on twitch.tv/TheSamuelAdams 5 days a week, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time if you did want to check it out. But again, today, I've got my Christmas bling on. It's the day before we really begin to ramp up to Christmas. And of course, if you are celebrating, I hope you have a fantastic time with family and friends. And if you do choose to celebrate another holiday, I hope you have a good time with that one as well. But with all of that being said, Caffeinate's going to be on a strange schedule next week. I'm not sure if we will even have any more shows until the first of the year, because quite frankly, when it comes to the gaming industry, everyone's kind of leaving San Francisco and other gaming-related locations, and so there really isn't anything going on. But if there is some breaking news, we will, of course, talk about it. So I'll let you guys know what's going on with future episodes of Caffeinate over on twitter.com/prettychillguy if you did want to stay up to date with all of that good stuff. And throughout today's show, I am going to have to take sips of coffee because still nursing the voice gives you more time to really enjoy the sports code for you video viewers. But what are we talking about today? First off, we have China ending the freeze on video game approvals. On top of that, Blizzard customer service has been sort of laid off, but also kind of paid off. We'll talk about that at the Irish hub of Blizzard's customer service. On top of that, speaking of Blizzard, they have launched an Overwatch League discipline tracker for the 2019 season, letting you know who is trustworthy in the video game esports world. On top of that, thousands watched the debut of Atlas, which didn't actually debut. Actually, who would have thought? Marvel's Avengers Academy is closing down in 2019. On top of that, Darksiders 3 gets a brand new classic combat option, which I thought was a pretty awesome, at least honorable mention for those that did want to take part in the Darksiders 3 game this holiday season. I was going to say debacle, but there really isn't a debacle to take part in. On top of that, the For Honor Assassin's Creed crossover event has now been detailed, and I'll tell you all about that. And finally, Halo Infinite has 4-player split screen and runs on, of course, as we know, a brand new game engine, but still, we have the confirmation of brand new 4-player split screen, and so we will talk about all these things and more in our nice brand new sports codes that I'm very proud of. You should really go watch the video version of the show if you are listening on a podcast, because the sports code is nice. Very nice. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the news of the day. China ends their freeze on game approvals. Here is an early Christmas present for anyone hoping to get their game into China. The gates are officially open again. And officially, the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda department confirmed the nation's new regulator has completed reviews on the first batch of games, the South China Morning Post reports. These titles will soon receive licenses to be published and operate in China, ending the freeze on approvals that began back in March. Quote, the first batch of games have been reviewed, said Feng Sixtin, I believe is how you say that name, deputy head of the State Administration of Press and Publications, otherwise known as SAP. We will hurry up to issue licenses. There is a big stockpile of games for review, so it takes a while. We will continue to work hard, and we hope that everyone can be patient. The SAP was formed earlier this year as part of a restructure of key government departments and took over responsibility for game approvals from the now dismantled State Administration of Radio, Film, and Television. The approval process remained on hold while the transition continued, and this has significantly impacted the growth of the Chinese games market, the largest in the world. China also recently formed an online games ethics committee to combat concerns over everything from addiction to monetization. And so an update was also added to today's story, and reports are emerging that Chinese game firms have seen their shares rise on the back of the news. The game approvals have resumed, and Seeking Alpha reported Tencent shares have risen by as much as 4.6%, while the site later added that NetEase's shares rose by 6.9%. Very impressive benefits for those that do have stock in Tencent and other companies that do operate in that area of the world. But overall, sip of coffee. This is badass. Okay, so when it comes down to it, I don't like the fact that games do have to be approved before they are put up for sale in China, but at the same time, you know, it is what it is. The rules are the rules. And so this really does improve the global economy in a way through gaming that you don't really see if this is more restricted in a way. And so right now you do see this beginning to open back up, and I'm sure that more and more games are going to be approved for sale in China. Now the big question is, how is this going to impact some of the biggest games in the world? You know, is Fortnite being held up? Is PUBG limited in some way? Are these big global powerhouse kind of games really being impacted by this giant, you know, movement? And I would say yes. I think you're going to be seeing much more of a movement in the Chinese games market because of these new changes. So, right now we see the end of the freeze on game approvals and the beginning of a brand new era for those that are into the Chinese games market. But right now, pretty impressive to see that they have finally caught up to the at least beginning of where they need to start paying more attention to what they are actually approving and really work towards getting the, you know, amount of games left to approve back down to 0. So, that could take a long time. In fact, they probably will never get done when it comes down to it, but still, something that is worth considering if you are planning on putting your game out in China. It's a big part of the global economy and one that you should definitely pay attention to if you do not already. But moving on to the next story of the day. Blizzard customer service concern as staff is accepted cash to exit the Irish hub. At this point, it is causing stress, a quote does say. Blizzard has moved to reassure its European players that its customer support will not be impacted by the exit of over 100 staff by the end of 2018. The company runs its main European customer service operation out of a huge office in Cork, Ireland that's home to hundreds of staff, and sources have told Eurogamer over 100 people have voluntarily decided to accept money to leave later on this month. Sources inside of Blizzard's Cork office, who asked to remain anonymous in order to protect their careers, told Eurogamer over 100 people have decided to leave the company, putting a significant strain on the customer service offering. These people have taken advantage of the voluntary program that offers staff money to leave Blizzard. Sources involved in this told Eurogamer that in the last few months, this program has been offered to staff at the Cork office at least 5 times, and the amount of money offered has increased. One source who took up Blizzard's offer, which amounted to a year's pay, said, quote, "It was too good to pass up. This is voluntary, don't get me wrong, but when you see a pile of cash in front of you over and over again, you start to lose hope and cannot see a great situation ahead." More recently, we were told, they say over at Eurogamer, at least 100 agents, managers, and back office staff will leave Blizzard at the end of December, and this, according to sources close to the office, has sparked concern about game support for Blizzard titles in the near future, with remaining staff left to pick up the slack. Quote, "This means people will struggle to get the help they need, and the people that are left in the office are being forced to end shifts they do not like to try and cover the massive loss," one source did say. In a statement issued to Eurogamer, Blizzard Entertainment's confirmed staff were taking up its voluntary exit offer, but stressed it was not encouraging people to do so. Quote, "The employees who are choosing to leave the company later this month are taking advantage of a voluntary and long-standing program we offer in various locations around the world. This program, which has proven popular in the past, gives eligible staff the option to make the most of incentives while proactively pursuing other career opportunities. No one is required or encouraged to participate in this program, but for those that do, we work hard to make it generous." And so one source who expressed concern about Blizzard's ability to offer round-the-clock customer support for its games in Europe following the exit of staff pointed to a tweet from Blizzard's European English language customer support account that announced callback and live chat services would be closed from 5 p.m. as evidence it was already having an impact. And so we could go on to talk about this more, but essentially if you do want to get support in the European section of the Blizzard community, well, you might have an issue going forward. I understand what they're doing, though, because that is a lot of people to pay, and so to be able to pay them off in one big lump sum and get those people out the door and onto other steps in their careers is a good way to go ahead and kind of, you know, dwindle down how many people you actually have on staff. Now, when it comes to being an outlet for support for a lot of games, yes, you are going to see an impact, and no, it will not be pretty for a lot of people. Especially for those that are trying to get help at, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, this could be a big impact on that kind of gaming setup. So, unfortunately, we do have the cutback on customer support, even though they say it's not going to impact the bottom line or the level of customer support that you do end up receiving. However, whenever people are cut, there's always going to be some kind of change. That's just what it comes down to, because there are less people in the office working. So there's going to be some kind of impact. That's all that I'm going to say with that one. But if you were concerned about this, well, this is what is happening. People have been paid off, and guess what? The customer support is suffering because of it, hypothetically. Again, hypothetically. We'll see what happens with that. But speaking of Blizzard, they have launched a brand new Overwatch League discipline tracker for the 2019 season. Your dirty laundry's getting aired, boys. Just saying. So, Blizzard Entertainment plans to maintain a list of Overwatch League players who were disciplined for infractions of the organization's code of conduct throughout the 2019 season, it announced in a news post on Friday. Quote, as players join the Overwatch League, the league office conducts a full review of their conduct and, where appropriate, takes disciplinary action, it said. While the league reviews each case on its own, key factors informing the level of discipline include both the severity and recency of the actions under review. During the season, the league office will continue to evaluate infractions and take action as needed. The so-called discipline tracker does not include players who are not currently under contract with an OWL team, but might face suspension or fines if they return to league play, Blizzard said. Also, players who were disciplined while playing the Minors League contenders are generally not subject to further discipline when they join the Overwatch League. So far, Blizzard has handed out fines and or suspensions to 7 players for various infractions, and they go on to say which players did receive that, but to be quite honest with you, I don't know who they are nor how to pronounce their names, so the article is linked in the YouTube video description. But all of these people, all 7, were suspended for account boosting and or doing some kind of account sharing. It does appear in my book. Toronto Defiant player Shea-Hung Park was suspended for 3 games for account boosting, account sharing, and obstructing a league investigation. Ooh. While Los Angeles Gladiators player Riku Ripa Toyevin, sure, why not, was suspended for 5 games for match throwing and toxicity. Let's back up a minute. I want to make it very clear. I apologize in any kind of episode of Caffeinate if I mispronounce a name. I'm terrible with names and big words. That's my big hang-up in my career. But the Overwatch League does kick off its 2019 season at the Blizzard Arena in LA on Thursday, February the 14th, and 8 new city-based teams are joining the roster, bringing the total count to 20 teams participating. And that, my friends, is a big number of people. But overall, good to see that they are holding players accountable for their actions and their choices, because if you can get away with cheating, then you will do it. I hate to be the guy to say that, but really, if you allow cheating to be accessible and if you allow cheating to be brushed under the rug, then esports will never be able to be taken seriously. Because if you look at something like the NFL or if you look at something like the NBA, if you are doping, you're going to be penalized harshly for that kind of thing, and your career will always reflect the choices that you made. And so now that we are seeing these people be held accountable for their actions in a kind of, formatted, very resourceful way, well, that's what you're going to be seeing, is that careers are going to be impacted. And this very well could, in the future, prevent somebody from being signed to another esports team. So will this eventually be one of those big things that does impact people's lives and their bottom lines and their careers? Yes. But again, that's the choices you make. One of my personal favorite sayings is that if you don't do anything wrong, then you have nothing to be worried about. So, again, people are getting what they deserve. If you cheat, you get treated like a cheater. I'm just saying. Speaking of some shady moves, thousands today were watching Twitch streamers not play Atlas because it has been delayed again. Atlas was supposed to launch a week ago, and its continual delays are ill omen to where the game is going forward. So if you looked at Twitch earlier today, you would have seen the same grouping of games that always sit at the top of its browse section, but just sitting beyond that top 10 most watched games was Atlas, the new pirate MMO from the makers of Ark Survival Evolved. For several hours today, over 33,000 people were watching a variety of streamers in the category, but none of those streamers were actually playing Atlas. Instead, everyone was just sitting around and waiting for it to release, or they were until developer Studio Wildcard, who appeared to be developing Atlas under the name Grape Shot Games, strange name in my opinion, announced that Atlas would be delayed again. This is the 3rd time Atlas's release date has been pushed back since it was originally announced at the Game Awards on December the 6th, and understandably, Atlas's burgeoning community of eager would-be players is pretty upset about that. Since midnight, dozens of Twitch streamers like Perfect have been sitting on Twitch wearing pirate costumes while countdown timers ticked away, presumably heralding the official release of Atlas on Steam. Those countdown timers, though, were never accurate, as developer Studio Wildcard had never specified the exact time that Atlas would release. All anybody knew was that it would arrive sometime today on December the 21st, but just over an hour ago, Atlas's official Twitter finally said the full release of the game would be again delayed until December the 22nd, with some streamers getting early access later on tonight. But almost immediately after, Atlas dropped to just a few thousand viewers on Twitch, while its official Discord of over 23,000 people has boiled over into a seething rage. And at this point, I wouldn't blame anyone for being suspicious of this brand new release date of tomorrow, December the 22nd. This is a joke, right, wrote one Discord member before their comment was drowned in a sea of insults and criticism. If you take a minute to watch the channel, others aren't nearly as kind. While insults and harassment are never tolerable, it is understandable why fans are upset. Atlas first debuted at the Game Awards on December the 6th with a cool trailer that promised to take Ark's survival systems and mash them together with a single-server, player-driven world inspired by EVE Online. When I flew out to Studio Wildcard's Seattle offices to check it out last month, I really liked what I saw, says the author, but Atlas looks so different to just about every MMO. And so you could go on to talk more about this and read more of the article, but right now what you need to know is that Atlas has been delayed yet again. Now for me, this isn't something that really impacts me because, quite frankly, I never planned on playing the game and I still don't really care. But with that being said, big hype in the Twitch community surrounding Atlas. I know that some of the biggest streamers that loved Sea of Thieves were beginning to jump into Atlas, but right now it seems like a lot of faith has been lost for the game itself, because you have some people saying, I'm not going to be playing this game until the entire public can try it out, or later on in the early access, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people are saying they're going to be waiting a good long while, and the big issue that I have with that, or at least the big issue that is going to be presented for the team behind the scenes, is that if you don't have people playing at the beginning, you don't know how to improve the game. And so if people don't get on and play as soon as the servers go live and really begin to throw some time into the game, then it could be kind of spelling a disaster later on as time does go on. But I'm sure that there will be plenty of people playing Atlas because it looks pretty interesting. And of course, Ark Survival Evolved is one of the biggest games of the past 5 years, especially on PC, one that's still very popular today, even if it has been going through some phases, if you will, over the course of the past long time. Unfortunately, never good when a game is going through a hard time. But if you did want to dive into it, hypothetically, you could be diving into the game, Atlas, from the makers of Ark Survival Evolved as soon as tomorrow, December the 22nd. What a good Christmas present that would be. Speaking of something you won't be diving into anytime soon, at least not until after the end of 2018, Marvel Avengers Academy is shutting down at the end of 2018. Mobile game Marvel Avengers Academy is shutting down on all platforms at the end of 2018, according to Gamasutra. Developer TinyCo made the announcement in-game this week. It said it's no longer accepting new purchases or downloads, although people can still log into the game and play until February the 4th. Shuttering Avengers Academy was a difficult decision, TinyCo said, but it's one that will allow the studio to work on brand new projects. Marvel Avengers Academy launched in February of 2016 as a freemium mobile title on iOS and Android. It let players build a superhero school to populate it with Marvel characters, some of them voiced by known Hollywood actors like Dave Franco and Allison Brie. But thanks to you, Avengers Academy has been a community where Marvel fans have been able to conquer the dance floor, eat cheese, punch Hydra in the face, and put penguins in places no one ever thought penguins could go, TinyCo said. Avengers Academy was a collaborative partnership between TinyCo and Marvel Games, and we are proud of the game and community that we have built together. TinyCo is owned by Jam City, the studio behind Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. Same thing. Hogwarts Harry thing. That game launched last April and has reportedly grossed over $90 million in revenue. Jam City has also recently entered a deal with Disney to develop titles based on Pixar and Walt Disney animation franchises like Frozen 2, which is expected in theaters on November the 22nd of 2019. Last month, it announced it acquired the Bingo Pop intellectual property in its development team, Yukon Games. And so, with all these other projects coming down the pipe, it seems like this development studio, or at least these developers, are being pulled off of Marvel and put on other little small franchise things like Frozen. You might have heard of it. But overall, good moves here, I think, because although the game is cool, you know, especially for younger audiences and those that are just generally looking for something to play while you're taking a shit, you still have what it comes down to, and that is that this is just a freemium mobile game. So maybe more development time can be put towards something that's a little bit more relevant for a lot of people, especially going forward as more of these big Disney movies are coming out. But I totally get the moves here, and I, for one, never played it to begin with. But I always like letting people know when games are shutting down. So if you did want to dive in, you better do it before February the 4th, because this game is going away. Cheers to Marvel's, what was it? Avengers Academy? Good name, terrible concept. Terrible concept. But Darksiders 3 is getting a brand new classic combat option to match the previous games. This should help the game feel a little bit more like the first 2 Darksiders games. Darksiders 3 was a pretty major departure from the previous games in the series. While it still retained much of the action and intensity that were all hallmarks of those games, it also changed up the combat with a few new elements inspired by more modern games like Dark Souls in order to freshen things up. While most of these changes were positive, not everyone liked the new take on combat. A new patch for Darksiders 3 brings back the series' classic combat. The patch notes explain that the new combat mode, which is called Classic, while the originally released combat style will be called Default, will allow players to do things that weren't originally in the game, like dodging to cancel attacks or the ability to use items instantly, rather than being forced to wade through their animations. This should, according to publisher THQ Nordic and developer Gunfire Games, help the game feel more like the first 2 Darksiders games. These settings can be changed at any point during the game and won't have any effect on difficulty or achievements. Also included in this new patch is an increase to the level cap, which will now be 200, and a rebalancing of enemies and items level 80 or above. This patch also comes with a few quality of life changes to things like ledge grabbing, which should be more reliable now, balance changes that should make Fury significantly more powerful, and checkpoints which should be more frequent, along with technical issues like crashes, which should happen less frequently. All in all, good stuff here. Darksiders 3 is a very interesting game because it is, as the article did say, more like Darksiders, or more like Dark Souls, than previous Darksiders games have been. And so, whenever you have that, it is a good step forward. I think it's a good way to kind of change up where the games could be going in the future and broaden your horizons. But at the same time, if you are seeing players want this classic kind of control option, it makes more sense to include it in the game in some way, shape, or form. So, with that being said, go ahead and dive in. Darksiders 3, brand new patch, out now if you are a fan of the way the game used to play way back in the day. That was a rhyme, yeah. But yes, if you can dive in right now on PS4, Xbox One, and PC and get those more accurate ledge grabs along with a new style of combat. Speaking of combat, For Honor has the brand new Assassin's Creed crossover event right now. I believe. Yes, right now. I had to check the dates. But Ubisoft fans are in for a real treat with the latest For Honor and Assassin's Creed crossover event. Beginning December the 20th and running through January the 10th, 2019, this 3-week-long event sees players relive the lives of knight, Viking, samurai, or Wulin heroes through the Animus, and there is proper lore to boot too. Essentially, the Assassin's Creed antagonistic, there we go, had to sound it out, again, one of those big words, company, Abstergo has created a unique gaming experience entitled For the Creed that transports players into the For Honor world as one of the aforementioned factions. One of the biggest changes for this event is a variation of For Honor's domination mode, which sees players, Dominion mode, not domination mode, not doing well tonight. Dominion mode, which sees players capture zones to lure out commanders Ezio Auditore and or Caesar Borgia to the battlefield. That is not the only change, however. For Honor has also further received changes to its maps, with some containing the assassin's iconography or commonplace Animus glitches. In-game animations will have also received updates, so that all drop attacks will have the potential to be a leap of faith or air assassination. Menu options and customization options also reflect this event, which is offering players plenty to experience in this crossover. Classically, For Honor's fighters will also be able to perform hidden blade attacks, and the game went so far as to also add changes for the minions. For Honor has also included a mask and weapon found in the latest entry in the franchise, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. But of course, considering Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Odyssey is one of the best RPGs of 2018, it is not a surprise to see it featured here. Overall, it seems like Ubisoft has gone all out for this event, which is something For Honor players will likely appreciate. After all, continued support for any game is always something to be admired, and it hasn't been too long since Ubisoft added the arcade mode to For Honor. Overall, very glad to see this, as always, because For Honor is a game that is always blowing my mind in a way. I remember when the game came out, and it had tons of bugs, as I said last week in an episode of Caffeinate, that were crippling to the game, especially server side, and also some glitches in the game that made the competitive stance they were trying to make, For Honor take completely irrelevant, because they just didn't work when it came to how things were playing out in giant, tournaments and stuff like that. And so now that there have been a lot of changes to the game and more quality of life improvements, it has become a game that is notorious for being bad at the beginning, but one that is at least solid right now for those that like that style of combat. With that being said, crossovers like this do nothing but add to the mix and the magic, and so I'm glad to see this kind of thing happening. But if you did want to dive in, For Honor, right now, big news, dive in, brand new crossover event if you did like Assassin's Creed. And the final story of the day, as my voice begins to diminish even more, Halo Infinite has 4-player split screen and a brand new game engine. Developer 343 Industries revealed some more details about Halo Infinite during a Mixer livestream on Wednesday, including the fact that the upcoming shooter will have 4-player split screen. Quote, "We made a promise to the community that we would have it in the next game that we made," it said. "It's working. We can play on it. It's a huge accomplishment for the team this year." The developer said it's been successfully testing the feature with its new Slipspace game engine, which is being built with PC in mind. It assured fans PC will be treated as a first-class citizen, but also said flighting programs, early access periods where people can play the game and offer feedback, will probably happen on console first due to the technical challenges of developing for PC. Different layers of the community will be able to play the game at different stages of development, 343 said. The developer doesn't have a start date for the flighting programs yet, but did say they will be opt-in and will start small but expand over time. 343 Industries also talked a bit about player customization in Halo Infinite. It inspired by the game 2010 Halo Reach, the game that came out in 2010, a better way to say that, because the game had the most detailed customization options of any entry in the series. Halo Infinite was first officially revealed at the Xbox E3 2018 briefing earlier this year, but while some were initially confused over whether it was part of the main Halo series or a spin-off, 343 Industries confirmed it is basically Halo 6. Quote, "You should consider it," Halo 6 writer and content producer Jeff Easterling told GameSpot in August. "Don't think of it as a weird prequel kind of thing. It's the next story. It's the next chapter in what is going on." Halo Infinite doesn't have a release window just yet, but it will launch on the Xbox One and the PC. So mainly, the one thing we know here is that it is still coming to PC, and it does have 4-player split screen, which is a kind of staple of the Halo franchise as a whole. I mean, whenever I would go over to my friend's house, whenever I was a younger kid, the ability to play with 4 other people on the same screen was such an iconic part of any kind of sleepover or birthday party or anything like that, that to see it coming back to Halo is something that I can't help but be excited about. So hopefully it will work out pretty well. Playable is a very loose term. Is it playable and enjoyable? That's more of the question that I would like answered, but I suppose we will see in probably hypothetically 2020 if I did have to guess. But with that being said, my voice is absolutely shot. I hope you guys have had a fantastic day, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the weekend. Again, I apologize for the sickness that has come upon my voice, but it is Christmas time, and so therefore Caffeinate is going to be taking a brief hiatus between Monday, Christmas Eve, all the way until probably the end of the week, but we'll see what happens. You never know what could come out of the channel, because it's always a good time here. But it is a Jolly Sammy. My voice is gone. I am going to go drink some hot coffee, actually, and probably play some Battlefield 5. Alan, have a fantastic rest of the night, and to anybody else watching, be sure to click that subscribe button and stay up to date on the hottest content coming to the channel, because my voice is shot. So, yeah, peace.